Okay, gewaldig. So thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Like we just mentioned, the printouts are being printed out, and they will be with us shortly. If everybody on the call can mute, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Please mute. Thank you. Today, B'siyata D'Shmaya, Shem Yichud Kutchabrichu Shchinte, with tremendous love and awe and excitement, we are going to be actually starting Sefer Likutei Moharan. There's a lot to get to today. There's always going to be a lot to get to every day, but more particularly today because we have, in addition to the first Amud to cover, we have this short little Torah called Lechu Chazu Mefalas Hashem, which is also known as Hashmata. Hashmata means that which is sort of left out. It's not part of the actual guf of the sefer, but we have this short little teaching that was included almost as a preamble, as another sort of introduction, and we find that in the beginning of the first chelik of Likutei Moharan Kama, as well as in the beginning of Likutei Moharan Tinyana, there's another Hashmata. This one is called Lechu Chazu. That one is called Echad Haya Avram. And these two foundational teachings, just in the sense of they're being categorically different than the rest of Likutei Moharan because they're on their own, obviously there's something very powerful and very important about them. So I apologize very, very deeply that we don't have the sheets in front of us, but you'll follow along as I read it for you. Yehud is getting the sheets, so they'll probably be here in a few seconds. And
by who? By Rebbe Nachman?
It's unclear. I don't want to say. It's unclear who decided that these should be nishmat. I don't know. That's an excellent question. So let's jump in. Lechu Chazu Mefalas Hashem. Come and see the wonders of God. His skalus nifla, a wondrous revelation. Misoid Gedulas Atana Liki Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the greatness of the Tana Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the author or the originator of the teachings of the Zohar. Beautiful. Let's pass them around. The teachings of the Zohar Kadosh, with whom Rebbe Nachman himself was very closely identified. Very closely identified. By Breslover Chasidim, the neshama of Rashbi is the same neshama as Rebbe Nachman. And we see that the more that Uman grows and grows and grows, the more that Meron is growing on Lag BaOmer, the more that Lag BaOmer grows, the more that Uman of Shoshana grows. These two holy gatherings, it's the same inyan. You know, anybody who is privileged to be by both, it's the same ruach. It's also the same people, pretty much. It's the very same energy. Rabbi Nachman and Rabbi Shimon are the same. We see Nachman ben Simcha has the same gematria as Shimon ben Yochai. These two tzaddikim were very, very closely connected, and so it's only reasonable that we would begin Rabbi Nachman's sefer with a revelation about Rabbi Shimon. And here we go. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai avtiach shalei tishdakach Torah miYisrael al yadai. Rabbi Shimon promised that the Torah would not be forgotten. Because it says in the Gemara in Shabbos, when our teachers, when Chazal entered Karen B'Yavne, Amru Asi the Torah shedishtakach miYisrael. They said, that's it. The Torah is going to be forgotten from Klal Yisrael. V'Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, and the Gemara records Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai standing up and saying, Shaloi tishtakach. The Torah will never be forgotten from Am Yisrael. Shenemar, because the pasuk says in Devarim, Ki lo yishakach mipizare. It will never be forgotten from his children or from its descendants, referring to Am Yisrael. Maybe it's kedai to shut the door if possible, if everybody can move in just enough so that the door can be closed. Shaloi tishakach mipizare. And as it says in the Zohar Kadosh, it isn't just that Rabbi Shimon is promising stam that the Torah won't be forgotten from Klal Yisrael, but it says in the Zohar Kadosh that it's a reference to the Sefer HaZohar itself, that in its merit, Am Yisrael would make it to the end of history and beyond the end of history and be able to march out into the redemption, Bahai Chibura. Right, and that's why again it's an introduction to a new revelation of the teachings of Rabbi Shimon called Likutei Moharan, which is also Nichlal and Hai Chibura in that work, and that's what Rebbe Nachman said. My sefer is Ischalta de Geulah, is part and parcel of the redemption. Because it says, Bahai Chibura Diu Sefer HaZohar. In this work that's called the Sefer HaZohar, Yifkud Bein Galusa, Klal Yisrael will get out of exile with this work, with this Sefer, with these teachings. And so you see from here again that Rabbi Shimon, both in Nigla and in Nister, that Rabbi Shimon stands up and he says, Shaloi tishdakach Torah miYisrael. The Torah won't be forgotten. Am Yisrael won't be lost. In fact, it is through his own merit, it's through his own inyan, right? Rabbi Shimon's teachings in the Zohar that Am Yisrael will get out of Galus. Va'ata says Rabbi Nachman, Boyu Re'eh. Now come and see v'havin and understand niflaos nistaros shel Torahseinu HaKadoshah, the awesome, wondrous, hidden mysteries of our Torah. Ki al kein samach Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai atzma al zeh pasuk. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai based his assertion that the Torah would not be forgotten on which pasuk? It's a pasuk in Devarim that says Ki lo yisi shakach mipizare. It's an open pasuk. The Torah will not be forgotten from mipi Zarei, from his descendants. It's an interesting thing. It doesn't say the Torah won't be forgotten from all of Am Yisrael. The Torah won't be forgotten, full stop or period. Mipi Zarei, from the mouth of his Zera. So who's Zera? Ki be'emes, says the Heiliger Rebbe, Chus Yagan Aleinu, b'zeh pasuk ba'atzmai merumaz v'nister soitzeh. This Torah, thousands of years prior, already had coded within it this secret of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, saying that because of me and because of my avodah, the Torah will not be forgotten. Shal yedei zarei shal Yochai, through the descendants of Yochai, which was the father of Rabbi Shimon, Chus Yagan Aleinu, shehu Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, al yadei lo tishtakach Torah miYisrael. Through Reb Shimon, the Torah would not be forgotten. You know how you know this? And before Rebbe Nachman, we looked. There's nobody who revealed this side. And it's a glaring thing. It's mamish in the pasuk. But Rebbe Nachman brought this out. You know that because when you walk in, what's it called? It's there. But it comes from here. Nobody said that before the Rebbe. The Rebbe revealed this side. And it's a pella. And the pella is, Ki soifei teva shel zeh pasuk. If you look at the closing letters of this pasuk that Rabbi Shimon himself quoted in the Gemara as a proof that the Torah would never be forgotten. From whom? Mi pi zaroi, from his descendant. Look at the Sefer Tevis. Ki is a Yud, that's the second letter, last letter. Loi is an Aleph. Sisha Kach will not be forgotten is a Ches. Mipi is a Yud, and Zari is a Vav. Heim Oisios Yochai. These very words have encoded within them the word Yochai. In what pasuk? The pasuk that makes a reference to Zarai, to his son. Whose son? Yochai's son. This is centuries before Rabbi Shimon came to the scene. He himself uses this pasuk to say that the Torah won't be forgotten from Klal Yisrael. Why? Because he himself is promising in the Sefer Azar that we're going to get out of Galus because of him. And ki loisi shakach ha-Torah mipi zarei, the Torah won't be forgotten in Klal Yisrael. How do we know that the Torah won't be forgotten? Mipi zarei, because of the descendant of who? Well, look in the pasuk. Yochai, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Pili plies. So today, if you go to Meron, right, as you're walking in the gate, they have this emblazoned over the gate, right, and it says Ki loisi shakach mipi zarei, and it's Sofer Tevis Yochai, but it was a Geulah of Rabbeinu HaKadosh. V'zeh shemeramez megala pasuk. Over here, the pasuk is revealing Ki loisi shakach, that the Torah won't be forgotten mipi zarei, from the mouth of his descendant, mipi zarei daika, meaning through the teachings of his son, of his descendant, which is Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Hainu mipi zarei shel zeh ba'atzmai, the child of the one who is himself, shu merum is encoded, v'nister and hidden, b'zeh pasuk, in this very verse, shu atana Yochai, which is the Tana Yochai, that his son ensured through his teachings, through the Zohar Kadosh, that Am Yisrael would get out of Galus, get out of exile, berachamim, with great mercy. Kehal Yedidim zarei shel Yochai, through the descendant of Yochai, Shemrumas b'zeh pasuk b'sefer tevis kanal. That's hinted in the ending letters of this pasuk. One of the most popular and famous words in Breslov, in Likutei Moharan and Likutei Halachos, is either hanal or kanal. They mean, respectively, hanisker la'el, that which was mentioned earlier, or kanal kanisker la'el. Okay, it's good to know this acronym. You're going to see it millions of times. Hanal, kanal, kanal, hanal. The whole time referring to that which was brought earlier, because it's a structure. And just like any structure, you build the foundation, and then as you're building level after level after level, it all goes back to the foundation, right? So that's hanal, kanal. It's all referring to that which was said earlier. Shuhu Rajbi, which is Rabbi Shimon al Yadai loisi shakach ha-Torah. Through him, the Torah will not be forgotten. Do we not have enough chairs yet? Yeah, will not be forgotten. Because like we said earlier, the Zohar is ensuring that Am Yisrael will get out of exile, and that's the teachings of Reb Shimon. And then he closes, V'da, you should also know, Shesayr Reb Shimon ba'atzmai, that Reb Shimon himself is hinted to in a different pasuk. Meaning that pasuk you have his father hinted to, Ki loisi shakach mipi zarei spells Yochai. Where's Reb Shimon himself? That's coded in a completely different pasuk. Ki da, a person needs to know, Ki atana kadosh Reb Shimon, that the holy Tana Reb Shimon, who b'chinas is an aspect of a pasuk that says, in Daniel, Ir v'kadesh min shamaya nachis. Ir v'kadesh, a holy inspiration from a different realm, min shamaya, from heaven, nachis, has descended. What it means to bring down heavenly teachings. This is the secret of Rabbi Shimon, because the Rosh Tevis of Ir v'kadesh min shamaya nachis spells Shimon, and that Shimon ben ki loisi shakach mipi zarei Yochai. This is the whole Indian of Rabbi Shimon, bringing down a new revelation from Shemayim in order to give us strength, in order to give us clarity and guidance and encouragement that we should make it to the end of time. And this is a worthy introduction to a sefer that we believe came through Nishmas Rashbi, which is Rebbe Nachman, who's connected to that primordial neshama, and a sefer that gives us hope that we're going to make it in the end, strength and guidance and eitzes, amukas and clarity and encouragement, like we spent so much time last week learning, to be able to make it to the finish line. But Ezras Hashem, let's begin the sefer itself, and we begin with a little bit of a introduction by Rebbe Nachman, and he says, "Be'ezras Kehal Elyon asher shamayim ba'aretz kana," with the help of Kehal Elyon, with the help of the exalted God, which is usually a reference to the sphere of Binah, Hashem as revealed through the sphere of Binah, Kehal Elyon. Kehal is Chesed, Elyon is always a reference to Binah. If you have your spheres charts in front of you, Asher Shamayim V'Aretz Kana, who has acquired heaven and earth, which is Tiferes and Malchus. V'Nasan Lanu es Torah Mimidbar Matana, and who has given us his Torah Mimidbar Matana from the desert. Naschal Ahatfis Chidushim Niflaim and Ayraim. We will begin to reveal Chidushim Niflaim, awesome, wondrous, novel ideas and Chidushim Al Maimrei, on the sayings and the teachings of Rabba Bar Chana. These teachings of Rabba Bar Chana are among the deepest and the most mysterious and enigmatic agados in Shas. They show up in Baba Basra, Dav Ein Gimel, Ein Dalet, and Rebbe Nachman begins the sefer, or Rebbe Nassan collected the teachings that Rebbe Nachman revealed on those enigmatic visions of Rabba Bar Chana, and he put them right in the first section of Likutei Moharan, and that goes from Torah Aleph until Torah Tes Zayin. Rebbe Nachman said that once he started revealing his teachings, he had a vision or a dream, and Rabba Bar Chana the Tana came to him in a dream, and he said to him, "Why aren't you teaching teachings on my Agadas also? You're revealing the depth of the whole Torah. What about my Agadas?" And Rabba Bar Chana began to express and explain to Rebbe Nachman some of the secrets that are encoded in his teachings, and so much so that Rebbe Nachman says the teachings in Likutei Moharan that are the first 16 until Tazayin, that are on Gesundheit, that are on the teachings of Rabba Bar Chana, he said, are said b'shem Amram. They're said in the name of Rabba Bar Chana, meaning many of the Svarim are saying, maybe he meant this, maybe he meant this. Rebbe Nachman says, this is what he actually meant, because this is what he himself told me he meant. Like, this is it. This is the decoding of the Maimrei. Rabba Bar Chana are said b'shem Amram, right? So it's very powerful. To sit and to learn this together. And before we jump, so he says, B'schus zeh, and the merit of this, and this again correlates to what we just learned about the Sefer HaZayar, that these teachings draw on that energy. Niskalalis l'tziyim b'ernana, we should all be zocha to make our way back to Yerushalayim. Be'ezras Hashem, all of us should head back and live where we're supposed to live, in Tziyah b'ernana with joy, El Kiryas Melech David Chana, to the city, to the palace of David Chana, of David HaMelech, David Malka Mashiach. Before we jump in, two very practical technical announcements. It should be clear to all of us that at the pace that we're going, we're going to do nothing more than literally skim the surface, just touch the basic structure and interpretation of what Rebbe Nachman means to say. As you can see in my Likutei Moharan, this is just Torah Aleph. These are the notes that I have in my head as I'm going through. I want to stop every word and explain and go much deeper into it. In fact, Baruch Hashem, I had the privilege of doing so because this is a book that I was zocha to write on Torah Aleph. There's 200 pages just on the first teaching, and I'm telling you, this is the basics. We could have written 400, 500, 600 pages. It's nothing. And so you have to understand, whatever we're going to be learning, we're just trying to cover the simple, basic meaning of Rebbe Nachman. And anybody wants, I'll post the link, which I saw in Liebman's actually has for relatively cheap, 19 pounds. You can buy the book if you want to go much deeper into Torah Aleph. But this is the case for all of it. We're just going to, Mama's just like a teal, just sort of journey through. And the function is that a person will get a little bit of a taste of the depth and the sweetness, and if any of the particular teachings speak to you, good. So then take that, and on Shabbos, right? And on Sunday, a person can make a Seder, and you can go deeper into it, or more generally, a person can make another Seder during their day, like Rebbe Nachman himself wanted. We said last week, to have two Sedarim, the Kiyas, which is what we're going to be doing, and Bi'i and Rav, and to go very, very deep into it, because Mamish, you could spend literally years and years and years on every single lesson that we're going to be covering in 45 minutes. It's a pella, and it's a bit of a shame, but it's also exciting because you get to see the whole picture. Let's jump into it. Be'ezras Hashem. Ashrei T'mimei Darach, says the Heilig Rebbe. What a privilege to learn this with you. Thank you so much for being here. To all of you and to everybody who's on the call and everybody who's on the group. What a schus. It should be a schus for all of Am Yisrael and all of our Chatufim and all of our Chayalim and everybody in the whole world. Ashrei Smimei Darach HaHolchem Esaras Hashem. Pasuk in Tehillim says, Kufyutes Aleph, fortunate are those of wholesome path, HaHolchem Esaras Hashem, who walk with the Torah of Hashem. Every lesson in Likutei Moharan, pretty much, especially the longer ones, begins with a pasuk from somewhere in Tanakh or Maimer Chazal that becomes the headline, sort of, for the teaching, that after revealing everything that Rebbe Nachman is going to reveal as the lesson unfolds and the structure is built, the Rebbe will come back to that pasuk at the end and then present a whole new way of interpreting every single word, every single letter, the relationship between the words in brand new giluyim that you could only have understood based on everything that he revealed prior. And that's the case for Torah Aleph, that's the case for most of the longer lessons. And so he begins with this pasuk. Ashris mimei darach, fortunate are those whose way is wholesome, tamim, ha'olchem esaras Hashem, who walk with the Torah of Hashem. Da, says the Rebbe, a person needs to know. And the tzaddik said that any Torah that he begins with the word da, he's drawing it down from the world of Atzilos, from the highest place. Da. Kehal Yedidim, that through Torah, doesn't say through learning Torah, we're going to get to that, through Torah, all of our prayers and our requests, which is tefillah, shacharis and ispodidus, that we're requesting and davening, are nitkablim, are accepted, are received by Hashem. And the inherent grace and the prominence of Am Yisrael is lifted up, is elevated before whomever it needs to be elevated. Whether in a spiritual sense, and we mean the malachim and the entities in the spiritual world, whether in this world, and you see that again and again, the more the Jews try to run away from their identity, the less they're respected by the non-Jews, the more that we stand up strong in our identity, but in a holy way, in an open, beautiful, loving way, the more that we're respected, the more that people appreciate that we have a light to shine in the world. Because now, in our many sins, the true grace and prominence of Am Yisrael Nafal has fallen. Because now in exile, if anybody looks around and you see what's sparkling, what's shining, what's glowing, what's respected in the world, it's not Torah and mitzvahs and morality and depth and consciousness by and large. It's the flashy things of the transient, fleeting world, and the transient kavod meduma of a celebrity, of a sports star, of somebody. Right, but that's where the grace is, and it's in exile. It's by them. But when we're engaged as we should be in our life force, which is the Torah, our natural grace and prominence is rising, is elevated. Now, everything that Rebbe Nachman says, he makes an assertion, he brings a proof. There's nothing in the Likutei Moharan that doesn't have a proof, that he doesn't base it on a proof text, which we already said was his methodology, was sefer Amidas that he wrote before his bar mitzvah, which were just one-liners, but he didn't bring any proofs to it until Rebbe Tzaddik HaKohen came, right, about 150 or so years later, and he wrote all of the different Maramakaimas to say where Rebbe Nachman got them from. But in the Likutei Moharan, he gives you the assertion, okay, because where does he get this from? How do you know that, and he brings a proof. Ki ha-Torah nikreis, because the Torah is called Ayeles Ahavim, a beloved doe, v'ya'alas chen, and a graceful gazelle, or a beloved gazelle, v'ya'alas chen, and a graceful doe, a female deer. Says the Gemara in Eruvin. You know what this pasuk means? The pasuk in Mishlei, Ya'alas chen, what's a graceful doe? What does that mean? Because the word Ya'al can mean a doe, or an animal, but it could also mean to elevate. Ya'alas chen, shema'ala chen alayim deha. Says Rebbe Nachman, the Gemara tells us that when a person learns Torah properly with consciousness and dveikus, and it's not just learning Torah as we're going to see in the next paragraph, it's much broader than that, then Ya'alas chen, what that means is that the Torah brings about grace on those who are engaged, alayim deha, those who are engaged in studying her. And as we're going to see in the next paragraph, finding Torah everywhere they look. It isn't just sitting in front of a sefer. So Rebbe Nachman is going to make clear in the next paragraph, which is so beautiful, because it takes it out of the context of just like, sitting in front of a book, and it makes it the whole life. The whole life you're learning Torah. As we're going to see, the more a person's plugged in that way, grace is coming into the person's life. Says the Rebbe, grace, beautiful, so that our tefillas become tefillas of chen, right? And they're accepted by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So these two things are connected. When a person's engaged in a Torah lifestyle, be'emes, as we're going to learn in the Derech Yisrael Saba, in the way of Yaakov Avinu, which we're going to speak about in the next paragraph, through that, our grace is elevated. When our grace is elevated, shema'ala chen alayim deha, ya'alas chen, grace is elevated, then our tefillas and our bakashas are accepted by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's a symbiotic relationship between the Torah that we learn and the tefillah that we daven. That's why it's very beautiful to have a seder like this before tefillah, because you go right into tefillah, and our words have much more grace by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I'm sure everybody's felt the impact on their tefillah. I did last time. My heart's on fire. It's mamish fire. And you go and you daven right after that. It's nothing like that. Okay. V'al yedei zeh, through this, meaning through this that our chen is elevated, niskablum kol hatfilas v'chol habakashos, all of our prayers and our requests are being responded to by HaKadosh Baruch Hu favorably. Now the Rebbe begins, and this sentence that I'm about to read to you is the first sentence that I ever spoke to any of my children. I whispered into their ear right when they're born, because to me this is the mission statement of a Jew. Ki ish ha'Yisraeli tarich tamid le'estakel b'haseichel shel kol davar. The Jewish person is in this world to constantly look at the intellect shall kol davar, at the meaning in every single thing. Ulikasher atzmai, and to bind that person's self, meaning it isn't just a facet of my life. Ulikasher atzmai, it's my whole essence in this world. This world is not arbitrary, this world is not meaningless. There's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence in every single prat, in every single detail, b'chol davar, so that seichel, that intellect should illuminate. Sheyesh b'chol davar, the world should be lichtig. We should live in a world that's shining, not in a world that's dull and dark and cold and meaningless. But we're here for the purpose of bringing about all that latent meaning that's there waiting to be recognized, that's going to lie dormant unless the human consciousness comes and by virtue of finding it and believing in it, awakens it and activates it. And you know what happens then? There is no person, place, circumstance, experience that a person cannot utilize as a portal into the embrace of the divine. This is what it means to be a Jew. This is the whole thing, beginning, middle, and end of it. Says the Rebbe, how do you know that finding meaning, that finding purpose, that finding intellect, clarity is going to bring your world to life? It's going to bring the world from a place of darkness into a place of light? Says the Rebbe again, everything is with a raya. Because that intellect, it's a big light. Big light. And is shining for that person in all of its pathways. As the pasuk says in Kehal Yedidim, the intellect of a person, ta'ir panav, it illuminates his face. A person, you ever saw a big tzaddik, a person mamish had seichel, there's a ma'ar, there's a light that's shining off that person's face. But the Rebbe is using, in his inimitable way, a little bit of a twist on the pasuk to explain. Because what did he just say? The sentence earlier, umeir loy bechol drachav, right? That finding seichel, finding HaKadosh Baruch Hu in every experience, finding the meaning in everything that we're going through. That there's nothing that's arbitrary, nothing that's mikra like Amalek, nothing that's just asher karcha b'derech, no, it just happenstance. That through that, all of his pathways are going to be illuminated before him. Now the Rebbe says, how do you know this? Because look at the pasuk, Chochmah adam ta'ir panim. Now on a simple level, it means that the wisdom of a person, or a person who's connected to intellect, that person's face shines. But the word panav could mean face, but it could also mean lifanav, right? That which is before him. So the Rebbe is using a little bit of a derech remes to read the pasuk, Chachmas Adam Ta'ir Lifanav, right? Meaning that it shines for a person the capacity to take a next step. Everything that happened to me isn't just what can I do and it happened for no reason. No, it's part of a journey. There's no despair in the world at all. I could take the next step. I'm living life for a reason. This is what it means to be a Yid. Ish ha'Yisraeli. Okay, now the Rebbe begins, and this is our very first Bechinas. Remember we spoke about it? Right? The whole Likutei Moharan is built on a system of spiritual links that are called Bechinas. This is an aspect of that. And now we're going to introduce our very first Bechinas, which is very dear to me because it's also my name. All right, and it's very, very dear to me. V'zeh Bechinas Yacob. This is the aspect of Yaakov Avinu. Meaning, this experience of finding the seichel in every single thing was literally the whole inyan, because it isn't just a facet. This is the spiritual essence of Yaakov Avinu. This is who he was. How do we know? Ki Yaakov zachal b'char, because Yaakov Avinu merited to have the firstborn. Because he bought the firstborn from Esav, we're going to get to at the bottom of the page. But beyond the fact that he bought it, we know that Rashi tells us Yaakov was really the real Bechar, because Esav was the Bechar on a this worldly level, because Esav came out first, but Yaakov Avinu was conceived first, which is incredibly deep. On an Olam Habadika level, Yaakov is the real Bechar. Who cares? Why does the fact that Yaakov is the Bechar mean that he's connected to this lifestyle? Says the Rebbe, Pashat, Shuhu Reishis, because what does it mean to be first? First is Reishis, right? Bechar is Reishis, you're first. Shuhu Bechinas Chachmah. And Reishis is an aspect of Chochmah. Now we learned in the system of the spheres that really Keser, if you take out your spheres chart over here, Keser is the first sphera on the top. But we explained that because Keser is so incredibly lofty, sometimes you leave out Keser and you include over here a sphere called Das. And in that schema, Chochmah is the first sphera. Reishis Chochmah. That's the side of the pasuk. Reishis Chochmah. Right? The Chochmah is the beginning. Says the Rebbe, K'moshe Kasav Reishis Chochmah. Chochmah alludes to that which is first, or flip it around. That which is first alludes to a person who's bound up with Chochmah. What's Chochmah? Is finding the wisdom in everything. And this is true also on a more meta level because the spheres are implanted into our creative processes. That the very first step in trying to do anything, in trying to create anything, build anything, write anything, paint anything, is first the Chochmah. Is the big picture planning. And then a person goes ahead and they do whatever they do to bring that Chochmah mikoyach in potential el hapayal into actuality. Yaakov Avinu his whole life was Bechar. He wanted to buy the Bechar. He is the Bechar. What's Bechar? Reishis. What's Reishis? Chochmah. Yaakov Avinu's whole life is plugged into finding the Chochmah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu embedded in the Olam HaAsiyah, which is Kulam, we're going to say in shacharis this morning, Bechochmah Asisa. Asisa is the world of Asiyah. That's the world that we experience that's all around us. We believe that Kulam Bechochmah Asisa. This is Yaakov Avinu Reishis Chochmah. And this is another aspect of the pasuk that says where Esav cries out, he tricked me 2 times. What's the word V'yakveini? Is mamish the name Yacob, right? Al-Kain Kar Shema Yaakov, because V'yakveini zeh pamayim. But if you look in Targum Onkelos, you know how Targum Onkelos translates the word V'yakveini, which is literally his name? V'chakveini, Chochmah. Yakveini, it doesn't just mean out, like we say outsmarted, right? Or tricked. Outsmarted Geulah. You know what Yaakov's whole thing is? Outsmart. Is to take the smart out, right? Is to mind the smartness, right? And the intellect and the meaning and HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence from within the world. He's outsmarting, right? That's v'yakveini, v'chakmeini. Yaakov is connected to Chochmah. Shemesh, and this is the concept of the sun. It will change the way that you look. Over here, it's very hard to find the sun usually, but whenever we do see the sun, it will change the way that we think about the sun and the moon, which we're going to get to. This is the aspect of the physical sun. It's just a manifestation of the spiritual principle. Because this seichel, finding HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence, this grand master plan with all of its intricacies and nuances and complexities of Kutchabrichu of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is like the sun. It's blinding, mamish blinding, but it's so full of light. And that's the aspect of the pasuk in Mishlei. The way of the righteous is ka'ar noiga, like a glowing light. Hoylech va'ar, that gets steadily stronger until midday. What's that an obvious reference to? The sun, right? What's a glowing light that gets stronger and stronger until midday is the sun. And the pasuk in Mishlei is telling us that the sun is the way of tzaddikim. That's oirach tzaddikim. Why the way of tzaddikim? Because chachmas adam ta'ir lefanav meir lebechol dracha. There's a path. The tzaddikim always know that the road doesn't end. There is no end to the road. Ain't shemir shpoilim klal. Whatever you went through, whatever you're going through, no matter what, it's part of the journey. You take the next step and you carry on. That's the way of tzaddikim, to find the chachma, the seichel sheyesh b'chol davar uleskarev l'Hashem yisbarach. No matter what a person's going through, you can get close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu through that experience. So far we have 2 bechinas of this concept. What are the 2 bechinas? Yaakov Avinu and... No. Yaakov Avinu, not Chochmah, because Chochmah is the general idea, but 2 bechinas of that. Yaakov and Shemesh, right? But you're right, Chochmah is the essence of it, but it has 2 bechinas. Zeh bechinas Yaakov, zeh bechinas Shemesh. Here we're going to come to our 3rd bechina, zeh bechinas Ches. This is the aspect of the letter Ches. Why? What's shaykh is the letter Ches to this concept? Because Ches, if you spell it out the way that it's spelled out here, is actually a word. Lashon, Chiyus. Ches is chiyus, or in Chabad they say chayus, right? Chiyus. In Breslau we say chiyus. It's chiyus. What's chiyus? Is life force, energy, vitality. Because chachma gives energy to a thing, gives life to a thing. If something is done arbitrarily, then it's dead. But if something was created with chachma, it was invented, it was designed, it's functional, it has utility, it's able to function. That's its life, was the thought that was put into it. That's the energy. K'maisha Kasav, also a pasuk, HaChochmah techayes bala. Chochmah brings those who have it to life. Chochmah techayes bala. Rebbe Nachman didn't eat when he was a child. His mother, Fega, Nebuch, to have a son like Rebbe Nachman makes a mother crazy. She was begging him, please eat, please eat. And he said, I don't need to eat because Chochmah techayes bala. I'm sustained just by Chochmah alone. I don't need to eat any food. Chochmah techayes bala. Right, so we do need l'chaim. But Chochmah techayes bala, it gives strength and it gives life to its owner. Machma, says the Rebbe, however, there's a big problem. The light of intellect is so incredibly great. The only way that you can access this master plan of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is through the aspect of the letter Nun. Ches is the Shemesh, is the sun, is that blinding master plan of Hashem's presence. Nun, what's Nun? Nun is the aspect of the moon and the Bechina of Malchus. K'maisha Kasav, Malchus is the final sphere, meaning our lived experience of this worldliness. You can't just access pure godliness. If you were in a neshama, you'd be blinded, you'd be overwhelmed. The only way that we could come into contact with the totality of Hashem's master plan is through the world of Malchus, which is under time and space, which is interacting with physical things, physical people, physical business deals, physical life, right? Mamish, this worldliness with eating and drinking and all the rest of it. It's daika through there, which, like you put on sunglasses, you can see the sun. Or more accurately, you can see the sun. You can't look directly at the sun, but you can see the light of the sun reflected in the moon. So how do you know that Nun is connected to Malchus? So pasuk, K'maisha Kasav and Tehillim, Lifnei Shemesh, Yinun Shemai. And it's mamish, the whole pasuk is mefurish through what Rebbe Nachman just revealed. Lifnei Shemesh, that before you can access the sun, what does the pasuk actually mean? It's a reference to Shloim HaMelech. Lifnei Shemesh Yinun Shemai means, may his name grow prominent before the sun. Okay, but according to what the Rebbe just revealed, Adarabba, Lifnei Shemesh, before you can access the light of Yacob Avinu, the light of the Chochmah, the light of the Shemesh, the light of the sun, Lifnei Shemesh Yinun Shemai, Yinun Shemai. You have to go through the aspect of Nun. What's Nun? Perish Rashi, Lashon Malchus. The word Yinun, says Rashi, is Lashon Malchus, right? Malchus, this worldliness, is Yinoin. What's Yinoin? Look at the Shirish, is the letter Nun. Says the Rebbe, that's what the letter Nun represents. This is the aspect of the moon. Because the moon doesn't have any light of its own. It only has what it receives from the sun. Now, I can't look at the sun because it'll blind me, but I can find the light of the sun reflected in the moon. I can't look straight at Chochmah Yisbarach. I don't know what Chochmah Yisbarach is. It would blind me and overwhelm me. But I can find, if I have the Yaakov Avinu eyes, the Isha Israeli eyes, I can find Chochmah Yisbarach encoded and embedded through my lived experience of Hashem Malach, Hashem Melech, Hashem Yimloich, right? As I go through my life, past, present, future, we spoke about it a little bit on Shabbos, Yediyah, Bechira, Hishtadlus, B'tachan. As I go through life, I can find HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence embedded in a way that I can handle it, that doesn't overwhelm me, that doesn't negate my sense of individuality, but I can be a person that's finding Hashem, and that's what it means to be a Jew, is to look past the external and to outsmart. If there's one word that you remember from this thing, outsmart. Take the smart out. Excellent. Yes, if we would start going down that road, we would never ever finish. I'm telling you, Rebbe Nachman says, once a person knows this, the whole Torah opens up. You can go through Torah Shebiksav, Torah Shebal through the lens of this letter. So simply saying Yeshua ben Nun, right, which is of course true. Yeshua ben Nun, because it's really Yud Nun. Yinain is Yud of Yeshua Hashiach Mi'atzas Meraglim, and that's the whole sig of the Meraglim is around this area, right? Yud Nun, Yeshua ben Nun, absolutely. Kimavur in Sunlight of Redemption have a footnote about that. This is the aspect of the sphere of Malchus, which is our world. It has no light of its own. It only has what it's receiving from the upper realms, from the letter Ches, which is an aspect of Chochmah, Shemesh, that incredible light of the sun. And says the Rebbe enigmatically these incredible 5 words: V'nase ar halavana ka'ar hachama. He doesn't say when, he just says, and it will. It will be that the sun will so illuminate the moon that the light of the moon will shine like the light of the sun. This is a pasuk in Yeshayahu referring to La'asid Lavai. But it doesn't say La'asid Lavai, the moon, which is Malchus, will be full of light and illumination, mamish like the heavenly realms, the spiritual realms. He just says, Vinase. And this is the first place in the Likutei Moharan where he makes reference to the Breslover concept, really the Beshti and the Baal Shem concept, but in Breslau it's a strong thing of Geulah Pratis. You don't have to wait until Mashiach comes. You can have Mashiach now. Rebbe Nachman says, HaMashiach Shali Kvar Higia. He said, my Mashiach came. The Mashiach for all of Am Yisrael hasn't come yet, and we're waiting for that. But in Breslau, it's a very big focus on Geulah Pratis. right? Meaning we ourselves can already begin living on the level of Mashiach with Mashiach perspectives. In that person's life who's finding Chochmah Yisbarach, the Ches reflected in Malchus and the Nun, already Nasa Arlavana Karachama. However, but it's not so simple, because there's a thing that you might have heard about that's called the Yetzer Hara. But a person who does not do this, a person who goes through life like life is meaningless, purposeless, a person who just looks at the surface of things, because Yaakov Avinu had a counterpart, and the counterpart is the contrast to Yaakov Avinu. This is the whole thing of Esav. Haliteini nam and Adam Azeh, just pour it down my throat. He sells away an eternal spiritual birthright for something fleeting, for God. And that he doesn't even refer to it by name, he just says it's red. Everything is external by Yaakov Avinu. It's all out. It's not by Esav, rather. It's all out. It's not smart. Right? That's all it is. He just sees the outside. Shebiza Sabachira. Because Esav goes ahead and he embarrasses the Bechira. What's the Bechira? Rashis. Right? So at a deeper level, it isn't just he's embarrassing the Bechar, he's embarrassing what the Bechar represents and why Yaakov wants it so much. Because Yaakov Avinu wants a lifestyle of meaning, and Esav says, forget that. I'm going back out to hunt. Esav embarrassed the Bechira. What's the Bechar? Ta'inu ha-seichel. What's the seichel? Is connected to which concepts? Bechinas, Yaakov and the Shemesh. Right? Yaakov and the Shemesh. He embarrasses Yaakov and the Shemesh. Bechinas, the pasuk in Mishlei, lo yachbetz ksil betvuna. The ksil doesn't want knowledge. Kim beskalas liboy. He just wants to reveal the tivus of his heart. Bezeh bechinas malchus or Rasha. Says Rebbe Nachman, guess what? You can live in this world in one of two ways. You can be a Yaakov Avinu person and the whole world is illuminated and full of meaning and depth and beauty, and you can bring people to life. And that's called Malchus to Kedusha. That's called you're living in a world that's mamish full of Hashem's presence, or Chas v'Shalom, and everyone has this Bechira. A person can live like Esav, and the world can be a Malchus to Sitra Achra. It can be a world like a moon that's not reflecting any light of the sun, and it's dark, it's chashuch, it's cold, it's meaningless. These are two ways that are in front of you. Rebbe Nachman gives in Torah Aleph a whole theology of Judaism. You can choose one of two ways. It's the moon that's not reflecting any light of the sun, and you can't even see it. Well, it just so happens that there's a pasuk in Yeshayahu that makes reference to humiliation, just like we just had a pasuk that made reference to humiliation in context of the ches, which is the shemesh. There's another pasuk that says, V'chafra halavana. The moon can be humiliated. So Esav, the way you see the way that Rebbe Nachman is building a structure, the way that once we connected the Shemesh to Ches, and we have a pasuk that says Vayivas Esav as a Bechira, so he embarrassed the Bechira. Oh, that's the Shemesh. All of a sudden you turn around and it's a pasuk in Yeshayahu that says V'chafra halavana. The Lavana is humiliated. Says the Rebbe, you would never have known this, but there's a kesher between these two psukim. One pasuk in Bereshis talks about the embarrassment to the Bechar, which Rebbe Nachman connects to the Shemesh. Another pasuk in Yeshayahu makes a reference to the embarrassment to the moon. Ma kesher between the Bechar and the moon. Says Rebbe Nachman, I'll tell you what, and these two psukim are one pasuk. You see? Vayivez Esav as a Bechira, V'chafra halavana. These two things are connected. He embarrassed the Ches, he embarrassed the Nun. This is the aspect of the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara, because it isn't just Yaakov and Esav, it isn't just two lifestyles. Each and every one of us has inside of us a Yaakov and an Esav, and the form that they take is the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara. The Rebbe says, I don't need a whole svarim on the Yetzer Tov, what it is, and I'll tell you what it is. It's this: Yetzer Tov, Yetzer Hara. Yetzer Tov nikra, because the pasuk refers to the Yetzer Tov and it says miskin v'chacham. He's poor and he's wise. It's a pasuk in Kehal. Let's take a look at the Mefarshim there. It's a reference to the Yetzer Tov. Miskin v'chacham, poor but wise. Why? Okay, so chacham we understand now, right? Because he wants the wisdom and everything. Yaakov Avinu, why poor? Because poor is malchus. Because malchus, the less lemegay meklum, it has nothing of its own, right? The less means it's malashon dal. It doesn't have. So the Yetzer Tov is a conjugation of miskein, which is malchus, that becomes a receptacle for Chochmah, right? It's miskein v'chacham, malchus and Chochmah. Bechinas malchus, bechinas aniyah v'dala. It's the aspect of this worldliness that fundamentally is lacking meaning. The less the megamei klum, it has nothing of its own. A person could go through their whole life without encountering spirituality once. Ki imash mekabelas mechachma, but it's up to our consciousness to channel down Chochmah into this world. And the Yetzer Hara, you know what the Yetzer Hara is called? Nikra Melech Zakin Uksil. In that same pasuk is called an old and foolish king. Why a king? Says the Rebbe. You know why? Because Melech is Malchus. Malchus, Zakin Uksil. It's an ancient Malchus, meaning it's a Malchus that's old, that's stale, that doesn't see a future, that doesn't see Ta'ir Panav, Chachmas Adam Ta'ir Panav. He doesn't see anything in front of him. Oirach Tzadikim. Oirach, for example, is the letters Or Ches. Oirach is Orches. So I'm not going into all the Ramazim. I promise you I could speak for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and not stop. I'm just giving you the basic of the basic, just reading and translating to understand. The Oimek is Ad Ein Shir Ve'Ein Tachlis. Oirach, yeah, is Orches. Oirach Tzadikim is like the light of the sun. Orches, yeah, the light of the sun. They don't have any pathway in front of them. Life is just meaningless. Zakein Uksil, but it's Melech, Bechinas Malchus. The sitra achar she'ena chafetza b'chachma v'seichel, that it doesn't want any intellect. Bechinas layach b'sksil b'tfuna is the aspect of the fool does not desire intellect. Canal. V'tzarchal echad litin karach lebechinas malchus. The whole job as a Jew is to give power to our experience of this worldliness, which is malchus. That it should be a holy malchus. It should be a world that's full of Hashem's presence. That's up to us to find it. To be a Yaakov Avinu person, not to fall for the facade of the externality. Le'isgaber al malchus the sitra achar, to overcome this tendency inside toward the Yetzirah, toward Esav. The Gemara says, a person should always cause the Yetzirah to be in a war with the Yetzirah. How do you do that? How does a person give strength to the Malchus de Kedusha? When a person is engaged in Torah properly. What does Torah mean? We expanded it well beyond the definition of sitting in front of a Gemara. We said it's all of life, finding Torah in everything. And so on, to find the intellect in everything. And that's why koyach doesn't mean just energy. Koyach is gematria 28. 28 is the chaf ches itim of Shlomo HaMelech. Eis lahav, eis l'snai, eis l'shalom, eis l'milchama. B'koyach, when a person, no matter what they go through in life, and all of the 28 times of Shlomo HaMelech, oisik b'Torah, you're finding Hashem in there, you're finding meaning. That gives strength to the Yetzer Torah. That gives strength to the inner Yaakov Avinu. That gives strength to Yaakov Avinu. The Chazal say there, the person should always try to give strength to the Yetzer Torah to overcome the Yetzirah. If he could do it, great. How do you do it? Yasek b'Torah. The Gemara in Kedushin says, in Paga b'cham u'nuvol Chihuahua, right? Maybe in Yavin, in Paga b'cham u'nuvol if the Yetzirah bumps into this person, mashchei lebeis medrash, where do you grab it? Bring it to the base medrash, meaning enable it to realize that you live life in a base medrash. The whole world is a base medrash. Everything you go through is a way of finding the meaning and the intellect and the messages of the divine. Through Torah, you give strength to Malchus de Kedusha. And you know what happens then? When you bring together the moon and the sun, when you bring together the nun and the ches, then our experience of this worldliness, which is just the letter nun, it receives energy from beyond. It receives intellect, wisdom from beyond. It receives life. Your whole world comes to life. And the ches and the nun are being bound together. And mamish, the light of the moon shines like the light of the sun. What do you get when you bring nun and ches together? Chen. You have the word chen, and that's what we began with. That the Torah is malach chen alim dea. It brings chen into a person's life. Says the Rebbe, what's chen? What are you talking about? A person that's engaged in living life with Torah, you bring together the ches and the nun, and the light of the ches illuminates the light of the nun. Ches is Chochmah, nun is malchus. Boom, a person's whole life changes. And that's the Torah malach chen alim dea. That's the depth of that Maimer Chazal. Okay, and let's just finish it, because that comes at nightfall. When one rises, the other one falls. That's what it says in Rashi, based on the pasuk La'im La'im Yamatz, right? About Yacob and Esav. When one of them is lifted, the other one falls. And then Malchus Rasha falls. The ways of God, again a reference to a way, to a path, are straight. Yesharim Darchei Hashem, it's tzadikim yelchubam, u'poshim mikashlubam. The tzadikim will walk with them, the sinners will stumble. Hainu ha'yedei Darchei Hashem, through the Torah. Hainu ha'Torah, ha'yedei zat tzadikim, which is Yaakov Avinu, shedveikim ha'malchus t'kedusha, heim nischaskim u'mekablim koyach ha'yedei zeh. They get stronger, they get strength. But the sinners walk on that very same road. It's called Olam Hazeh. And they use Olam Hazeh as the moon to shut out the light of the sun. They see it as being dark, as being meaningless. B'chinas Malchus Rasha, and that's the Yitzhahara's whole effort, is to cause us to live life in that way. As I feared, we were not able to cover the entire Torah Aleph. We made an excellent. So we weren't supposed to cover the whole Torah Aleph, but the first page. But Ezra Hashem, tomorrow morning we jump back in with Kehal Yedidim, and we'll try to make up and cover ground by going a little bit more quickly. Thank you, Chaver, so much for joining us. You got your first taste. I hope that it was as enthralling as my first taste was of Likutei Moharan. Changed everything. Ashreini. Thank you so much for joining us.
שכל כך אוהב אותי האב שלי, מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני